Hello, and welcome to another episode of our Bulletin Broadcast. I am Ben, joined by Greg as always.
Hello, I am Greg as always.
And Dan as always too.
Hello, me and Greg recently got married, so we are both the as alwayses.
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome to the as always house. Sit down, have a cup of tea. We can. I suppose we can't do that in these times. Sit down 2 meters away from us, and bring your own tea. We'll look at each other. I love the as always house. I can imagine it, like you and me, and we have like an individual single bed each in our room, and like when we both go to bed at night, and we like do a little kiss on our hands, and then we put our hands up against each other, and then we pull the light out on the bedside lamp, and then we just peacefully tuck up under the bed.
There is no way that you haven't thought about all of this before.
Yeah.
This has never come to my mind before.
I don't believe you.
No, I don't at
all. This has made me really smile.
Well, this week we are going to be discussing, I guess we should just call it like the remake culture, or like the remaster culture, whatever you want to refer to it as.
Phenomenon.
Well, yeah, we kind of expanded it slightly, didn't we, to remakes, remasters and ports, because different opinions depending on what they are, I think.
Yes, let's have someone outline what are the differences, because a lot of people use these words interchangeably. Dan, I hate to hold up the podcast, but your mic was making some funny noises.
I believe it may be mine.
Oh, it could be yours, yeah. There we go. That's much better, I think, maybe. Ooh.
Well, it should be okay now.
Should be okay now, yes. Would someone like to outline the differences between a remake, a remaster, and everyone knows what a port is. A port is just when you bring a thing that was on some one platform over to another platform.
Yeah. So, so as far as I'm aware, I believe I'm correct. A remaster is essentially when a game is given updated graphics, and not much else is touched. Maybe the control system's updated a little bit just to bring it to this kind of era of gaming.
Modernised slightly.
Yeah, whereas a remake is exactly that. It's the same game, but remade from the ground up.
More.
Yeah, rather than just throwing some varnish on it. It's actually completely remade from scratch.
Okay, that's great. I mean, thanks for those definitions, Ben. You really helped us delineate the differences, so that we can help, place this conversation. It's nice.
So I feel like Dan should start, just because Dan is the one who's been playing the recent releases in terms of the remakes.
That is true. If it's new and it's out, I'll play it, to be fair. But yeah, there was kind of 2 in 1. I actually got 2 in the same day: Final Fantasy VII and Resident Evil 3. So yeah, I like them. I can't really, when it comes to remakes, I can't argue against them. I think the difference between kind of a remake in gaming as opposed to like a reboot in a film or something like that is they tend to stick to the source material. Mm-hmm. So if you take kind of the most recent Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, they are essentially the same game but more. They haven't messed around with it. They haven't kind of changed the characters. They haven't changed the story, but they have kind of just updated it, made it look absolutely phenomenal, and just added extra bits to make it kind of a more rounded experience. And I thought they were both amazing, to be honest. Final Fantasy VII, it's not. Well, see, they haven't done that. They have messed with it slightly.
They've written in new stuff, haven't they, with Final Fantasy VII? That's my understanding, is it not? That they've made some new missions and done some new lines and that sort of thing.
Well,
Yeah, there's also the combat system was kind of completely changed as well, wasn't it?
yeah. So what they've done essentially is the original Final Fantasy. You started off in Midgar, and you were there for say 6 to 8 hours. It was kind of the introductory section of what is sort of a 50 odd hour game, and it kind of got you used to the controls, it got you used to some of the main characters. There were some characters that you met that I think everyone kind of fell in love with, but you didn't really get to know them that much because you weren't there for very long. So the Final Fantasy VII Remake is essentially, I think it took me I'd say about 40 hours ish, but it's the whole thing is in Midgar, so they've extended that massively. Everyone's fully voice acted, so you really get to know the characters way more than you did in the original. However, they haven't done, whereas Resident Evil kept to the same basic story, they have added a new story element, which I am going to have to be very careful not to spoil, but it basically, I mean, I can't say, but it looks like instead of following the story in the second part, you are going to be able to change things. I mean, I suppose the statute of limitations run out on a game that came out 21 years ago. Characters die quite early on in Final Fantasy and in number 7, which has kind of been well known for a long time, but it's looking like you might be able to prevent that from happening, which in my eyes completely changes the story. So I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, I've never played any Final Fantasy games, so I've got nothing to say about this other than it sounds to me like they're trying to change things up a bit in the game, which obviously is maybe a challenging thing for someone who has played the original, and they don't want that plot point that they're so familiar with to change. In the same way that it might be a bit weird for me if it turned out that maybe Darth Vader wasn't Luke's father. That would be surprising and confusing.
Well, it's a similar thing. I mean, I don't think I'm spoiling. It's not a secret to say that in Final Fantasy VII, there's a character that joins your party called Aerith, and she gets killed about 10 hours in, and it's like this big oh my god moment, because it wasn't done back then. I mean, it's such a long time ago, 21 years you're talking. It wasn't, you weren't used to main characters, especially characters that were part of your party, dying like that. It was like oh my god. It was, when I researched after I'd finished the remake, it's kind of been put as one of the most defining gaming moments. If you look at those kind of lists as, defining moments in gaming, that is one of them. And in this one, obviously, because she's fully voice acted and just so damn quirky, you really do feel for the character, and it's that build up of knowing she's going to die, but then it looks like maybe you might be able to prevent it, and I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, such a big moment. If you're going to remake a game, you expect it to kind of follow the same path, and if it doesn't, I don't know. I think you're going to piss a lot of people off. But I mean, I can't say. I mean, when we get to play the next one in 40 years, it might be that you get to go back at the end and do over or mess with time, or I don't know how it's going to work. So it's kind of it's a point that's I'm contesting that may not be an issue, but I don't know. Playing the
I'm kind of glad. Oh, go on. What?
Playing the remake, although it was absolutely breathtaking and amazing, has actually really made me worried about the next part.
I see. I was going to say, I'm kind of glad you mentioned Final Fantasy VII, because there's a lot of things they're doing with that game that I'm not entirely sure of.
You and a lot of others.
The release format, this kind of episodic release. I'm not entirely sold on that.
Well, I don't know how it's gonna work, because I mean I remember finishing the first one and being at like level 70 or 80, and if you wanted to get to level 100 you were grinding for like another 20 hours, whereas on this one all my characters have hit the level cap of 50. I've got all these summons, some of which you didn't get until way later in the game originally. Like, I don't get how that's going to carry over, or are you just going to have to start from scratch again with a whole... Do you know what I mean? Like, are you going to start part 2 and then everyone be at level 0 and it's essentially another game as opposed to continuation?
Well, this is one of the things I'm worried about as well, because obviously they've gone for this episodic release, and they've got, obviously, as is the norm, they've got the different editions, they've got the deluxe, the collectors. So is that going to be how it is for every episode of the game? Are we going to get a Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 Collector's Edition?
So
Probably.
I think you guys have gotten right to the heart of the issue of this whole remake remaster situation, which is how much room, if any, is there for like a creativity and recreating and iterating and adding more things and taking things out of these classic games, and how much is this sort of thing an exercise in, are these here to win over like old fans? Are these exercises in like basically fan service, or are they here to sort of make something that's part of their developing history or whatever accessible to new fans? Is it a mix? Is it, and how do they strike those balances?
It's a challenging one. I mean, from what I read, because I did quite a lot of reading when I'd finished it, because I didn't want to spoil it. I didn't know where it was going to end. I didn't know how it was going to go. So I waited till I finished it, and then I did a bit of research, and it basically I can't remember who said it, the maker, whoever was on the original team and the new team, basically said, we're kind of trying to make the story, we're trying to sort of live up to the story that everybody knows, as well as sort of bringing new people in, but having enough to keep old fans on their toes so that they're not expecting everything that's going to happen, which I don't know that I particularly agree with, because if you're going to remake a game, part of it is, as someone who played the original, you want it to be the same experience, I guess. And if they're making it so that it's not, then is it still a remake, or is it a 2.5 or 1.5? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of like that the big malarkey there was with the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie. A lot of people were pissed about the reimagining of this origin of this, legendary Batman villain.
And his ability to go up and down some really steep stairs. I mean, wow! Can we all just? I would have held onto a handrail if it were me. Can I just say?
I know it just shows how crazy he really is.
Yeah, gets to the root of it. Yeah.
But I mean, so this is my stance with remasters and remakes, is that I worry how they'll affect the future of gaming in terms of us seeing new IPs,
which is valid.
I'm video game companies, publishers, they have this tendency to they try something new, it becomes popular, it becomes the norm. DLC, all that kind of crap. They were experimental ideas at one point that were accepted by us as gamers and just kind of became the norm and what we know. So my worry is that if you've got some team who are saying, like, pitching this game idea and it sounds really risky, are the publishers gonna go for that, or are they gonna just be like, no, do you know what, let's remake Resi 4?
Well, looks like it's already on the cards, but yeah, I get what you mean. I had a similar kind of discussion with a friend the other day, and we were saying that, so essentially this kind of remake culture, when you really think about it, it's only really recently started off with Resident Evil 2 and then the Final Fantasy 7. I think they're the two big ones, aren't they? Because
Resi 2 was Game of the Year last year, and that was however many years old.
But so Resi 2 correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure, didn't Resi 2 start off as a fan project that Capcom then kind of realised the potential in it and kind of took it? It was almost like cease and desist, but we're not suing you. We want to do this. Come join us. Kind of come and
they were essentially recruited by Capcom.
Exactly. And with the Final Fantasy remake, it was originally a PS3 tech demo when they used the PS3 engine to recreate part of the Final Fantasy 7 intro. So both of these things they weren't originally set out to kind of, oh, let's make a remake. They were fans going, oh my god, we need this now. So the origins of them, I think, were quite pure, if you like. They saw that the fans wanted them and they went for it. I mean, Resident Evil 2 is amazing. It is up there as one of my... So the original Resident Evil 2 is probably one of my favourite games ever, and the remake easily matches it. You can tell it was done with love. I know it sounds ridiculous, but you know they really did stick to it. They made it more. They really did go for it, and it was absolutely amazing. But I'm okay with it in that respect if they add to it, but not if they don't. If they kind of just... That's why I'm more for remakes than I am for remasters or ports, because I feel that is more of a lazy way to make money as opposed to actually doing justice to the original.
Yeah, so I have to admit I'm not a massive fan of remasters. Even having bought one, maybe. I think I bought The Last of Us. I definitely bought The Last of Us remastered. And that was because I'd just finished playing it on the PS3 and was absolutely in love with it, and I got my PS4 a couple of months later. I was very late to The Last of Us. And I was like... It was about 6 months later, and I was like, yeah, I'm happy to play this again.
See, I didn't have a PS3. I mean, I've got one now, but I had a 360 in that generation. So when I got a PS4, I got The Last of Us remastered just because I wanted to play The Last of Us. I didn't get it because it was a remaster. I just thought, well, if I'm going to get it, I might as well get it on the newest console I can get it on.
Yeah.
But from what I can tell, I mean, there isn't a lot in it in terms of kind of the look of... Like, apart from getting the DLC with it, I didn't see a huge amount of difference between the PS3 and the PS4 version.
As far as I'm aware, there isn't.
I think it'll just be like basic graphical upgrades, but like nothing wild.
Yeah.
In the way that a lot of Xbox like upgrades of like previous gen games are just bringing it up to 1080p or whatever.
See, again, that to me feels more like a cash in. Oh, okay, let's see if we can get money for old rope, if we can get money for this game on a new console, as opposed to, you know, fully remaking it and really kind of... Essentially, although you've got the core framework there, you're building a new game, aren't you, with these remakes?
Yeah.
I mean, on the other hand, my first play of Last of Us was on the PS4 version because I didn't have it on the PS3.
See, this is the issue.
Things like the Ezio collection is a fun example, which was the 3 Assassin's Creed games with Ezio in, where they put a lot of work into making it look better, and a lot of that, well, some of it backfired, certainly, especially in one or two instances from what I can remember. But it's a nice way to play the games at a higher level. The best example I can think of is Master Chief Collection, which then they've now put on PC, and I semi-regularly play with friends of mine who have only had PCs and have always been interested in Halo, and this is literally their first time into Halo, even though most of the Master Chief Collection games, apart from Halo 2, they've done nothing to warrant reselling this. They just look a little bit higher resolution or whatever. They've done nothing to warrant it. They're just doing it because they can repackage what they already have, basically.
Well, see, this was my argument with the Dark Souls trilogy when they released that onto PS4, because that actually really annoyed me. I was very, very, very heated by that.
I remember.
It was such an ignorant cash grab.
But wasn't it like 70 or 80 quid or something? It was really expensive.
It was 80 quid. It was 80 quid. You had Dark Souls Remastered, which had recently been released, so there was no work needed for that. Dark Souls 3 was a PS4 game anyway, so they remastered 2. And then, all they had to do was remaster 2 and bundle it together on one disc, and they were flogging it for 80 quid.
Yeah, see, that to me is because it's not a remake, because they haven't really done anything extra to it. I mean, I don't even mind it if it's a port, but it's more like a Game of the Year one. So instead of paying 40 quid for the original game and 20 quid per expansion, and you end up paying like £100, you end up picking it up for like 25 on the next gen console, but it's got all the DLC built in. So that even that is something. But when it's just kind of a straight, like when they did, back to Final Fantasy, when they did 12, I think they wanted like 35, 40 quid for it, and all they'd done is kind of slightly polished it and chucked it on the PS4, and the problem that they did was it didn't look right. They upped the character models, but then the backgrounds looked really kind of muddy, and it didn't do the game any favours to put it on in kind of full HD, and yet it sold pretty well from what I remember.
Yeah, see, the only remake I've actually bought myself is the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy. And I don't regret that at all, that purchase. Not a single bit. You know, it was £25. The first 3 games from back on the PS1 were remade from the ground up. Controls were tweaked. It felt like £25 worth of a remake.
Yeah, I agree with you. Same with Spyro.
Yeah, see, I didn't buy the Spyro one, but yeah, I was fine with the Spyro one, you know. I don't have my issue is, I guess in terms of like remasters and remakes and stuff, is cash grabbing on nostalgia, you know. You know, when you... Fair enough, okay, Final Fantasy remaster, you can charge a full game price for that, because that is a full game.
Mm-hmm.
But when you remaster something and then you want 40 quid for it, I mean, I'm looking, like I was saying before we started recording, I'm looking at this list of remasters and remakes on Wikipedia. And I'm looking at like Burnout Paradise remastered. Why?
Yeah, who's asking for that?
Yeah, some of them make sense, you know, BioShock Collection, Borderlands Collection, Ezio Collection, yeah, fine. Batman Return to Arkham. Why?
Yeah, and I also kind of get it if the game's got a multiplayer as well, because I know that The Last of Us multiplayer was really popular, And I know a lot of people that bought the remaster just so that they could then continue playing the multiplayer, but on their current console rather than having to dust off the PS3. So, to an extent, that makes sense. Like the Call of Duty, what was the...
Oh, the Modern Warfare remastered.
Yeah, and that was a nostalgia trip for a lot of people because that was bringing an old multiplayer that they loved onto a new console. So that isn't so bad. It's justifying it, I think, is the problem.
Okay, so then let's talk about, just to go back to Resi. Let's talk about the fact that, all signs are pointing to a Resi 4 remake. Why do you think that's a good idea? Because we was talking before about a week or so ago, and I made a joke about a Code Veronica remake.
Yeah, and I said I wanted one.
Yeah, you said, yeah, no, that's it though. And when I looked into it, the general consensus of the community is that a Code Veronica remake would be a good idea.
I think it depends on how recent it is, because with number 4, you can get that on the PS4, and it doesn't. If you go back and look at the original Resident Evil and Final Fantasy, they're basically cardboard boxes with faces on. We're talking 20 years, whereas Resident Evil 4, because it's had some tweaks and some remasters, and it was on the GameCube and then the PS2, and then I think there was a Wii version, and it's had a few polishes over the years, so it doesn't feel quite as dated. It's got the updated controls and the over-the-shoulder view instead of the originals felt like you were moving a tank around. So it's not quite as necessary, but it all depends with what they do. So far Resident Evil have kind of, I feel, really hit the mark with the remakes, like with number 3. So number 2 was a massive game, and it had a lot of kind of replay value. You were supposed to go through it multiple times. Number 3 was short. They knew it was short. I did I was telling you, when I was going for the platinum, I completed it 5 times in a day. I got it down to, I think, 1 hour and 1 minute was my quickest playthrough. But they knew that, so they put in another mode, which I must admit I haven't played yet, but they added more to it to justify charging what they were going to charge for it. So I just, if they remake 4, it all depends on what they do with it. They've hit the bullseye a couple of times, but then, like you say about the original IP, so Final Fantasy 15 came out 4 years ago, and Resident Evil 7 came out, must have been about 3 or 4 years ago. Are we not going to get a Resident Evil 8 or a Final Fantasy 16 because we're getting all these remasters now?
This is the thing, isn't it?
When are they going to draw the line? If they suddenly, to Greg, if they suddenly decided they're going to remaster all the Fallouts or all the Halos, would you be happy about that, or are you kind of itching for the next instalment?
If they were we're going to remaster Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas and put that on Switch, I would be over the fucking moon, Dan. I would. I know how to get you talking. Well, it's not that I feel like I'm not talking. Well, it's just I don't know what to say when you guys are talking about Resident Evil and Final Fantasy. I'm just sort of sitting here and thinking these are video games.
Okay, so where do you think they should draw the line? Not with them in general. Just with the whole remake culture in general.
Well, it's hard to know whether or not they should draw a line. I think, they can sort of sell whatever they like, and if the market punishes them, it punishes them. It seems like these make a lot of money, and so they can keep making them. The positive noises I heard coming out of someone from PlayStation for the new generation, I don't know if this will actually translate to reality, was that they wanted to make it so that the games you've bought in PlayStation 4 just come over, and it's the same with Xbox, that there won't be an incentive or a reason for them to make remasters if everyone already has the previous iteration now on their new console automatically upgraded graphically. They would need to completely remake it like they are with these Resident Evil games in order to justify it. So I think we might be heading into a point where it's sort of a null argument, because the new consoles kind of kill the argument. If that's truly what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I heard that they plan to launch 1,000 backwards compatible titles. I think we spoke about this before. So I don't know. It's kind of it's a hard one.
I think it's naturally going to come to an end, because it's gonna. So if you look at 20 years ago, the games that we had, PlayStation 1, and you look at now, it is a completely different league. Whereas we are getting closer and closer and closer to photorealistic games already now. In 20 years' time, I don't think the leap is going to be as big. Does that make sense? So
it's going to plateau.
Yeah, it will. It will plateau, because, like Greg says, even in 5 or 10 years' time, they're not going to need to remaster PS4 games for the PS6, because if they're just straight kind of moving over, and the graphics are already, I mean, look at Final Fantasy VII. It's jaw-dropping in places. In 5 years' time, 10 years' time, that's not going to look massively dated compared to what we were playing 10 years ago. So I think it will kind of peter out, and there's only so many games they can remake that I think, like Greg says, that will sell. You know, when we start getting fully realistic photo 3D Pac-Man, I think they need to stop.
I have to disagree. I think the industry is going to ride this gravy train for at least another sort of 6 or 7 years, I reckon.
It will ride it for as long as it can, but if the demand dies, then they can't do it anymore.
The demand won't die, though, because, I mean, as far as I see it, we're only on phase 1 of the remaster culture. You know, we haven't even hit the PS2 remasters properly.
Oh, sure. What Dan and I think, are saying is that they, once they hit the plateau that is the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4 era, the graphical changes will stop being as pronounced, and it will become more about just upgrading resolution and slight texture upgrades, which won't actually be able to justify and actually bring in the money to justify the expense of doing all of those. And once they hit PlayStation 4 generation anyway, these things all start to carry over for free. So I think you're right in that we're still yet to see plenty of other things be remastered, but I think it's got a lifespan.
I mean, the lifespan, even if it has got a lifespan, the lifespan's still going to be at least another decade.
Oh, sure.
It is, but I mean, so if you look at it at the moment, I know I'm going back to Resident Evil, but it's the easiest one to do. So they remastered Resident Evil 1 on the GameCube, if you remember. Mm-hmm. They've now done Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3. If they remastered Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5 came out on the 360 and the PS3. They're not going to be able to justify remaking that, because it doesn't need it, because it's modern enough. So that's apart from Code Veronica or maybe a spin-off, that's that franchise out of Steam. And then we go back to sort of Crash Bandicoot, where there was 3 main Crash Bandicoots, and they've remastered them already. So if they're going to use that kind of IP anymore, it's going to have to be a new game. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think you're right. I think they're going to keep going, but eventually, I think it will peter out on its own, because people are not going to, there's a finite amount of games on the PS1 and 2 that they've got to pull from, and certain games people just aren't going to want to, they're not going to pay out for a remaster because it didn't do well the first time.
Can you guys hear that?
Mm-hmm.
On my okay, I'll close the door. There's what sounds like a team of dogs that are like very small, all barking excitedly, possibly about the being in on the recording of this great podcast.
It sounded like a dog on helium.
Yeah.
It sounded like lots of dogs on lots of helium.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you guys. I guess I'm just kind of... I'm more worried about the timescale than anything. Like, I definitely agree that it will plateau and it will come to, like, the PS3, PS4 remakes. We won't see them. But I'm just worried, I guess, about the long-term damage kind of to the industry, like how many IPs are we going to miss out on in 10 years?
Well, I think part of it is that games are so expensive to make now that these lucrative games that they can make at less cost, and they can turn around with a general sort of a roughly decent guarantee of enough people buying it for the nostalgia factor. They'll do that, and that can fuel them to and sort of build up their prestige for their new version of that game. For example, Final Fantasy VII has been remade this year. I'm sure there'll be a new release of whatever number they're up to on Final Fantasy next year, or possibly, well, maybe not this year, probably next year, that sort of builds off of that sort of degree of hype.
Well, you reckon we'll get a Final Fantasy 16?
I don't know what number you're at, but sure. My knowledge of Final Fantasy is that you guys they count it in like 15.3 and like.
Oh, it's not Kingdom Hearts, no.
Is that Kingdom Hearts? I don't know.
Yeah, you've got like a 2.5 and a 2.8, and I don't think we'll see Final Fantasy 16. I think that they'll opt to put all resources into the next installment of the remake.
I don't know that it'll damage the industry, because at the end of the day there's still going to be people making games and people buying them, but I think it will stunt it slightly. I mean, again, I keep going back to Resident Evil just because it's the kind of most straightforward one, but so number 7 came out in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So you would really expect an 8 by now, really. But we've had 2 games since, and neither of which have been new. And you're right, say that they now decide that they're going to remaster number 4. It won't be this year, so that will be next year. So then will we then have to wait until 2022? So it's then been 5 years in between them.
Right, but I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is, like, every studio has a finite amount of resources, right? A certain amount of people that work for them.
Yeah.
So if I come into a studio and I pitch a new IP, not only have I got to pitch my IP, but I've got to pitch the idea that my IP is more worth resources than this remaster that they know they're making that's going to guarantee their money.
Yeah, it's that taking a gamble on the unknown, isn't it?
And it doesn't help that a lot of new IPs at the moment are getting shattered. Like, Anthem was a flop. I mean, for good reasons, but like a lot of these new games are flopping hard because people don't want to take the gamble on big budget new AAA games a lot of the time because they've been burned. I think for a good proportion of people, because they've bought it and then they're like, but will you buy this loot box which will allow you to defeat this dragon that's really cool? And people are like, right, okay, so I'm not going to buy one of these again. I'm going to buy something I know I'm going to get. You know, I liked Spyro when I was 3. I bet it'll be just as good, but maybe better now. Yeah, you're right, Ben. In that people, new IPs have to compete with sure things.
I guess that's just my main worry, you know, it makes it, like, not only have you got to pitch the game, like I said, you have to convince them to take resources away from other projects they know are going to guarantee them money.
But then it might work in the opposite way, though. It might be that new IPs that perhaps aren't as strong, they don't get made, but the stuff that does make it through is amazing because of what it's had to go through to get made.
Okay, so you're trying to flip it.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of new. What's that? Ghosts of the samurai one. That looks amazing. But I mean, if you sit and think of the new stuff that's coming out this year, there's a few sequels, but there isn't it. I can't think of a massive amount. But.
Well, to be fair, I think a lot of stuff. There's probably going to be some. There will be some announcements, I'm sure, because we're waiting on a new generation this year, and we still don't know anything about the launch titles, to my knowledge.
No.
There was no E3.
I know. I swear, a new Halo game is the launch for the new Xbox.
Oh, it's bound to be.
They've been like teasing it, thinking, everyone's gonna get really excited, even though once a year we show a bit of Master Chief's helmet. They're gonna love that. Same thing again.
The thing is, though,
it's gonna be great.
Most launch titles are sequels, so I mean, the rumors of the PS5 are going to be Horizon Zero Dawn 2 and. Oh God, I can't remember what the other one was, but there was a handful that were kind of rumoured to be launch titles, and they were all sequels.
I mean, I would imagine, I said this episodes and episodes and episodes ago, but Horizon Zero Dawn 2 is my pick for the PS5 launch.
Bound to be.
Either that, or unless they've kept it really secret, Spider-Man 2 maybe?
That would be a big hitter. But they may want to bring that out like next year to keep up momentum.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Nintendo like to do a big game every year.
The only two I can think of are those two that would be good, because obviously The Last of Us 2. Okay, The Last of Us 2's been delayed indefinitely, but I still think that will be a PS4 title. They're not gonna.
I think that will be both, but yeah, I think you're right.
You know what I mean, but it won't be made for PS5.
No. No, it won't. I do think you're probably right. It could be Spider-Man. I mean, Horizon. It was so popular, and it was really good. There's been absolutely kind of nothing mentioned about a sequel, and you think that the only reason they haven't is because they're going to drop it as a launch title. That's the only reason I can see.
Yeah. I just realised we haven't discussed ports. Let's talk ports, because I know Dan is very, very opinionated on this.
I've got so many opinions on ports.
Go for it. Go on, Greg. Shout at us.
So since I got a Switch, which is this console that I'm madly in love with, I have become extremely opinionated about ports, which is something I never had much opinion on, other than thinking it's broadly good, it's cool for more people to play things, but now that I have this amazing thing, I mean, I'm not commuting like I was because current times, but when I was commuting a lot, and the Switch was just like my saving grace. I would play Minecraft or Pokemon for hours every day, and I'd sit there and go, oh fuck, I wish that I had Fallout 3. I could really do a Fallout 3 right now. That would be so cool. And all of these games which are would run on the Switch, and a lot of this stuff that are from the last generation or this generation or the generation before or whatever. I just want the Switch to be this magic port magnet that they just put everything on, and then I will play it all with my face, and I will just I will fight, and it will be good. And ports, man. What's the downside?
I have one. So
the Switch is the home of the ports, though.
I can't help but
not enough.
I can't help but laugh because me and Greg became Nintendo Switch friends today, and I didn't know it tells your sort of an overview of your activity. It tells the other person what that is, and you spent a lot of time playing Minecraft. I'm not going to embarrass you with the numbers, but
no, you can give the numbers. I want people to know how far I travel every day.
175 hours on Minecraft.
Wow!
Just on the Switch version. I got the Switch for Christmas.
Yeah, it said like Pokemon around 25 hours, and then Minecraft 175 hours. I had to read it twice. But
Yeah, man, yeah. I live in Reading. My job is in central London. You know, and I have a lot. You know, you got to do something with that time. Otherwise, it's just hours and hours of your life you never get back.
so I
got no shame.
I disagree with you slightly on ports, just because I do think it very much depends on how you play games. So, like you say, ports are absolutely the thing for you because you spend so much time traveling, and that's how you use your Switch. Whereas I use my Switch as a home console, unless I'm like going away somewhere. I don't have a need to kind of travel with it, and it feels like. So every now and again, I'll kind of pre-order a few games over the year, and I'll go on to upcoming games, and it feels like I'm just scrolling for the Switch through pages and pages and pages of ports, and it doesn't feel like anything new has come out apart from Mario, which was God knows how long ago, and like Luigi's Mansion. It really feels like all it's got is ports. And for me, as a home console, like I don't want to go and pay 40 quid again to play something with tiny controllers with giant man hands. Like I don't. It just doesn't do it for me.
Oh, this is amazing. I don't want to. I'll respond to your point in a moment. But I've just realised the Nintendo Switch has a little stand on the back, so I can prop it up and
How are you
hold the
just
controllers.
realising? How in 175 hours of Minecraft on the train have you never worked that out?
Do you think I sit down? I take British trains going into London. I don't sit down on my commute. I've only just spotted that. That's really blown my mind. Yeah, I could see your point in that, you know, there's a lack of new games, but that's like an endemic Nintendo problem anyway, in that they do have trouble picking up a lot of new games, and a lot of things that run on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One don't necessarily run on the Switch because they're not leaning into power. They're leaning into, you know, their quirky Nintendo quirk for the generation. Yeah, that's their problem. That's like a given with a Nintendo system, I think.
I am pro port.
Boo.
I feel like I fully understand what Dan's saying, and I fully agree with you. You know, if you're playing it solely as a home console, yes, it doesn't benefit you. But I mean, you could argue that you're just not the demographic.
But with the Nintendo Switch, everyone's the demographic.
No, they're not, are they?
Buy one today.
You know, I mean, a lot of kids, this is one of the first consoles they'll own, right?
Oh,
so
that's depressing, but yeah.
Or you know, they'll own a PS4 and they'll have a Switch, and so it's like ports make sense, you know, like with Greg's example. You know, oh, I played Minecraft on my PS4. Okay, cool. Now I can play Minecraft when I travel wherever, you know, on holiday. You know,
Yeah.
Overwatch, you know, okay, ignoring the Blizzard scandal, like, the fact that you can play Overwatch online on your Switch is not a bad thing.
But then that still becomes what we were saying about when remasters and stuff have a point. You know, Overwatch is a multiplayer, so having that kind of portability with it is a reason to go out and buy it again. But there are some games that are being ported onto the Switch that I just don't get. I can't see any other reason other than trying to get another 30-40 quid out of someone.
But would that be because you've never played it? Like, for instance, for me, I've never played Skyrim. I've never played The Witcher 3. So, if I was to buy one of those games, I would genuinely be tempted to buy The Witcher 3 on my Switch And I mean, I play my Switch at home. When I'm at home, I play it on my TV, right? But when I go out, I will play it handheld, you know. So to me, there's an appeal to have this game that's coveted as such an amazing game, like The Witcher 3, be able to play it indoors and then take that with me and have the same progress. You know, when you get truly absorbed in it, you can take it anywhere you go.
I do think though that the Switch is in a slightly different category, just because like when I think ports, I'm mainly thinking of things that have been ported from like the 360 to the Xbox One, or from the PS3 to the Xbox, etc., or the fact that every Nintendo console since the N64 has had Mario 64 on it in some form or another. That to me is what I'm thinking ports. I mean, the Switch has got that benefit of being portable. So yeah, you can argue that any game that's put on it is for a reason. It's the same as when they put things like Fortnite and whatever on a mobile. That is because it's a different way of playing, isn't it? It's a different platform. So I think the Switch is slightly different. I suppose I'm like you say, I'm not the demographic, but I understand ports on a Switch more than I understand them just console to console, like home console to home console.
But then what if you missed it on the previous generation? Somebody like you who had a 360 and then bought a PS4, the time that you played The Last of Us was a port/remaster.
But I literally, because there was not a lot out when the PS4 first came out, and The Last of Us Remastered wasn't that far into its lifespan, I think I paid 50 quid for it. And then about 6 months later, I bought a PlayStation 3 with about 8 games, which included The Last of Us for 40 quid. So it depends. I mean, that is personal preference. You don't have to necessarily buy the remaster. I mean, obviously I collect consoles, so I've got them all. So if I want to play, you know, an original PS2 game, I will probably pick it up on the PS2 as opposed to paying 15 quid for it in the PlayStation store. I know not everyone has that luxury, so I guess it just depends. I think it depends on what you're getting for your money. That's kind of my stance on it. I don't mind remakes just because they've put the effort in. Remasters, I'm less inclined, and ports, I don't know. Maybe on the Switch, you've swayed me a little bit on that.
See, to me, ports are an accessibility thing, right? Like for instance, people like yourself who didn't play it on a PS3, you know, let's assume that they didn't do what you did and bought the PS3. The only way for them to play it is to buy that port, to buy that remaster. Even with GTA 5, you know, GTA 5 has, I guess again it's a bit of a niche thing, because GTA 5 you can actually continue, as far as I'm aware, you could continue your character from 3 to 4, like from PS3 to PS4, your online character.
I bought it again, and I don't think you can. But
no, if you can't, then that's fucking bullshit.
But at the end of the day, GTA Online is massive. The amount of work and effort, the constant updates, the events, everything they have going on. I get that. I get why they've moved it onto the new console. And certain games like The Last of Us, like GTA, like I even bought the remaster of Tomb Raider on the PS4. Not because I was like, oh, shiny new graphics, but because there wasn't a lot out for it at the time. It wasn't massively expensive, and I was like, that game was so good, I'm happy to play through it again. So,
and that's it. Like sometimes they make their money simply because someone's just like, I really love that game. I will buy it again to enjoy it slightly more because it looks a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. if they made a Metal Gear Solid remake, I would sell my liver for the collector's edition. Like, hands down. I'm not even going to deny it.
Yeah, that's... there's no arguing with you for that.
But, you know, if they ported it, would I buy it? Or if they remastered it, would I buy it? Probably not. I'd be less inclined. I mean, I'm not going to lie and say that I wouldn't consider it, but I would be less inclined to.
I do think it does. At the end of the day, it is down to personal preference. I wish I had some examples. I did have some examples, but they've gone from my mind. But there were some games that were pretty shocking the first time around, and they've kind of ported them over, sometimes a couple of times, and it's like, who's asking for this? Like, what? Why? This
Skyrim is the example that comes to mind.
Yeah, but I mean, Skyrim.
It's on everything.
Yeah.
No, but that game's been ported so many times.
Yeah,
but that game, as a result, has made more money than small countries. It's like the Bethesda is such a no-brainer for them. What was like in 2011 when it came out, like a phenomenon. People fucking love that game, and they put it on whenever they like because idiots like me will buy it again.
Yeah, but I mean, games like that with such a massive fan base, it's that, you know, if they can make the money. I mean, I don't. You know my opinion on Skyrim. It's not my cup of tea, but I vaguely remember seeing shots of the remaster and actually thinking, damn, that does look a lot better. Because I always thought that the original kind of Fallouts and Skyrim, I always thought they were ugly as hell. I mean, they were. Just strange gangly characters hitting other strange gangly characters.
You're a gangly character.
I never thought that they were particularly, you know, breathtaking, but I did.
No, Bethesda's not renowned for making beautiful.
Well, there you go.
They're functional.
Exactly.
Although Skyrim was very good for the time it came out, that was universally felt.
Yeah, well, I'm not part of the universe, so I didn't feel it.
Yeah, I guess the sort of the ending fin is a supply and demand situation, really, and if you get your money worth for what you're buying.
Yeah, I mean, if you, the consumer, will buy a thing, then they, the producers, will make more of the thing.
Yeah, I mean,
that is economics.
In turn, keep it in mind, you know. Don't just blindly buy something, because if you buy something and it's a shit remaster, then guess what? We're gonna keep getting shit remasters and ports.
Yeah,
and
complicit.
I agree. I think my bottom line is, you know, there's you do you, get what you want to get, but please just research it first. Have a little bit. That's what worries me. That's when I worry about kind of the money grabbing, is when you get, you know, I was raised by grandparents, and you know, you get your 70-year-old nan going out and, oh, I want a game for Christmas for him, and then you end up with a remaster of an 8-year-old game that wasn't very good at the beginning, because the way they've marketed it to people that aren't, you know, perhaps as into gaming, is that it's a new game. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That it's that kind of greediness, that kind of trying to just get people to spend the same money on something that has been done. That's what riles me up.
Yeah, that's the. I don't have anything to add, Greg.
Oh, as someone who was raised by wolves, they would only buy me nothing because, you know, wolves don't play video games. No, I didn't have anything to say either. As you could tell by that nothing sentence.
Oh well. I guess that brings us to a nice little natural stop, I guess.
Yeah, that's a nice yeah. Let's all naturally stop together, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Dan and Greg, for joining with me and rambling.
Yeah.
I apologise. I feel like I talked a lot in that one, but I don't know. I haven't left.
Strange for Greg not to say anything.
I haven't left the house in 40 days. If I got an opportunity to yell at someone, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, Greg, you were strangely quiet. It was very unsettling.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to give me, like, a talking time, like a special protected Greg time, like a little Greg corner with, like, a special bell, that's fine. I like it. I like that. That sounds cool. But no, sometimes, not everyone has a lot to say. Sometimes I'm just enjoying the revelrous chat of my good friends.
We'll just, we'll set aside 5 minutes every podcast to talk about Fallout.
I think this is the only opportunity we haven't managed to kind of steer it towards Fallout or Halo, and that's why Greg's been slightly quieter.
Yeah, maybe that is what it is. I do have strong opinions on those things. I mean, we can talk about apples if you all like. I don't mind.
Have you discovered any more Apple Pokemon? That's the true question.
I haven't. I've discovered lots of Pokemon, and some of them are really good. One of them's a little guy that is lots of little guys called Phalanx, and it's like a little Spartan warrior one, and it's got a special move called No Retreat, and suddenly, like, the whole screen becomes like a Spartan war, like...
What?
Image. Yeah,
is that the weird caterpillar you sent me earlier?
It's not a caterpillar. It's lots of little chaps.
It's a yellow caterpillar, and everything I traded him, I got another yellow caterpillar.
They're all babies. I had so many babies. They're really good. I recommend googling it, guys. They're really cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm in love in a way.
Oh well, we shall leave it there then, and we shall see the people next time.
Wait, were we still on?
We was.
Oh, okay. I was ranting about yellow caterpillars.
That's good. People love that.